32 began, 4 remain. Yes, folks, we're into conference final time of the NFL season. And speaking of 4, speaking of 2, joined by 2 of the greatest in the industry, 2 of the sharpest minds of the game. So bigging you up, guys. Let's keep it going here. Drew Dinsick, best bet last week. The Chiefs plus 9.5. And even money 2.0. Get it in the back, son.
Yeah, never in doubt.
Never done.
Definitely didn't need an injury to the most important player on the field to get that one home. But yeah, no, that overall the Browns fought hard. I thought they recovered from what was a back-breaking fumble through the end zone to end the first half. When a lot of times we've seen teams go into halftime after that, that type of mistake, and it's 19-3, season's over. We had a good season, guys. Let's just go out and have fun out there. But they fought hard. They fought back. Even after the Baker Mayfield throws a pick on the first drive, they fought back. So credit to the Browns and Baker Mayfield especially for putting together a very solid performance. Not quite enough to get it done. Kevin Stefanski made some very questionable decisions, in my opinion, in the fourth quarter there. And Andy Reid, on the other hand, 4th and 1 play call from the conception of what they wanted to do to all of the body language of all of the players on the field being prepared to sell that as we're not really going to run a play. We're going to try to draw you off sides, to then having the cojones to throw it. Which could always lead to an incompletion, even though that guy was wide freaking open. But as soon as they snapped the ball, 5 seconds left on the play clock, watching it live, I was like, oh, this has 100% chance to succeed. Like they just won the game. Like really, really well done. And credit to Andy Reid for coming up with that concept. Credit to the Chiefs for executing it to perfection. And if you want to move on in the playoffs, you got to make plays like that. And Chad Henne, Tyreek Hill, they did it. So good on them.
As the great Herm Edwards said, you play to win the game. Suma, Ravens minus 2.5. Sorry, Bills. Or sorry, the Bills minus 2.5. Sorry on the Ravens, Drew, but great look for you as well, Suma, last week.
First of all, one thing about the Andy Reid decision on 4th and 1. I think this should be the gold standard in the future.
Yeah.
Just going for it in these kind of situations, because there's not really an argument that you give your defense a shot, because you're probably just exchanging like 30 yards in the exchange. So I think that was a decision that got a lot of hype, but should rather be the norm or the standard, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely.
Bills. To be honest, I think at some point during the game when Lamar threw that pick 6, I thought like the score could be 28-3, but it could also have been a tight game. So It was a really weird game. I think in the first half, Gabriel Davis couldn't haul in a perfect touchdown pass from Josh Allen. And then Allen overshot Stephon Diggs on a walk-in touchdown down the field. So the Bills could have scored a lot more points, but there was also a point where the Ravens could have tied the game. So pretty weird game in hindsight, in my opinion. Just happy that the minus 2.5 came through. Let's get some more winners this week.
Yeah, and just before we get on to that, Drew, that was just such a tough play. I kind of felt for you there, mate. It was literally the 14-point swing at the end of the third quarter for Ravens backers, and for long-term Ravens backers, a very, very tough one to stomach.
It was. And, these are tight games. We knew it was going to come down to who made the first mistake and how bad that mistake was. And the Ravens made the first mistake, and it was very bad, very, very bad. In the moment, seeing the play kind of develop and seeing the way that the Bills defended it, they played a perfect defense for what the Ravens were trying to do on that 3rd and goal. Lamar, if he decides to tuck it and run, probably makes it because they were playing the pass. And it was frustrating to see what is at least 3 points turn into 7 the other way. And then, of course, Lamar gets injured on the next drive and it's game over. So that was a tough way for them to end their season. But, the playoffs and margins are narrow. and they weren't able to turn the Bills over. They weren't able to get some key stops in that game, and I didn't think that they deserved to win necessarily, but the box score certainly suggests they should have scored more than 3 points, so it should have been a heck of a lot closer.
That's for sure. Let's move on. If you are watching us now live on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook, please do let us know your thoughts. If you have any questions, hedging opportunities. I know there's a lot of people have future tickets. We won't boast about it, but Sumi, you definitely have the Bucs or a few others as well. Yeah. But let's move on. We're going to talk about the AFC game first, the AFC Championship game. This is a fascinating market. Drew, I'll come to you first, but let's take a look at the prices that currently at Matchbook at the time of recording. You can back the Bills in the money line at 2.38. The Kansas City Chiefs just under 1.68. The main handicap line is 3 right now. You can back the Bills with the 3-point start, and 53.5 is the total. And Joe, I want to talk about this market first of all, because it's been a fascinating one. Very early doors on Sunday, prior to the Chiefs game, one offshore book threw up Chiefs -5. Some pretty sharp people got the Bills +5 thereafter. Then Mahomes' injury in the second half. The Bills at one stage I saw were a 1-point favorite. Then the game, 2 or 3 hours after the game, everyone is like, oh, hold on a second. It's not a concussion. Then the Chiefs 2.5, 3. It's settling on 3. We were chatting pre-recording. Ian Rappaport, just from the NFL Network, just tweeted out that Mahomes looks like he's a goal. This market settles at 3 for you, or does it get back to 3.5?
I think it gets back to 3.5. And I would say be careful trusting Ian Rappaport. Sometimes he's just making news for the sake of making news as opposed to actually having information.
Shocker. Okay.
But I do think that Mahomes goes. And I do think that right now the market is pricing about a 90% chance that he goes, maybe 95 at this point. And once it's fully confirmed 100%, I do think that this closes at 3.5. So if you want Chiefs, you need to get involved now at -3 before this thing drifts out to 3.5. At 3.5, I personally think that there is some Chiefs tax built into that. I would have made this game 3. I think 3 is fair. I think the fact that there's some uncertainty about Mahomes even playing is giving you a fair price in this game as opposed to value backing the Bills. And I think the Bills at 3.5, I'm interested in the Bills. I'm not sure I'm going to pull the trigger on it ultimately, but the way that the market has matured is interesting because they put up a line of Kansas City -5.5 on Sunday morning the Bills game. And they were taking reasonable sized bets, and they took a lot of Bills action, and they moved the market down to Kansas City -3.5, and so that gave a lot of people the opportunity to shoot for a big 6-point middle on this one, which is I think what most of the market action we've seen to this point is. And yes, it's settled on 3 because people think we have about a 90% chance that Mahomes goes. Now the Chiefs in this particular spot, they match up well against the Bills. In fact, we've talked a lot about this, that the Bills are kind of Chiefs light. They're very similar in terms of their concepts, their approach, the skill set that their quarterback brings to the table, their weapons in the receiving game being at the 99th percentile, the running game being a little bit suspect, the defense having some soft spots. I mean, the blueprint between these two teams is extremely similar. And, at least by my numbers, the distance between the two teams is not that great, which is why I think, even incorporating a little bit of home field advantage, the fans are obviously mattering in the playoffs. A couple of venues that have had fans and had crowd noise, you've seen a little bit of influence on the refereeing. I think you've seen a little bit of spirit on the part of the home team being lifted. I'm assigning a little bit of this home field advantage in those situations, but I think you can see it. And so if you want to put a 2 to 4% win probability added to the Chiefs because they're home in this spot, that's fine. Bills have been home now for a number of weeks. They've played their last 3 games at home. And this is their first road game now in a while. So to some degree, there's, this is maybe we're a little over, a little high on them just from a market standpoint, because they've looked pretty good playing at home in front of a crowd 2 weeks in a row. So it, granted, even though they didn't cover against the Colts, I thought they looked fine in that game. And again, they only scored 10 points on offense against the Ravens, but the wind completely neutralizes any kind of extrapolating you want to do about the Bills offense from that game. This Bills offense is live, in my opinion. The Bills are live because on any given day they can go out and score, 20, 27, 30 points. And that's really what you need to have to, as a bare minimum, if you're going to compete with the Chiefs. In fact, the whole concept last week, take the Browns at +10 or +9.5, whatever, was, are they live? Do they have a chance? Well, their offense can score. So the answer is yes. And I think that is really the same kind of boilerplate logic that you can apply to this one. The question is, is it going to get to 3.5? And at 3.5, do you see enough value to get involved on the Bills? I'm still on the borderline there. I think there's a better angle on the total, but I'm curious what Sumit thinks about the side before we go any further.
Yeah, and Sumo, about this side, I mean, you wonder too, even with Mahomes, if he is a goal, we did see that he injured his big toe during the first half, and he wasn't mobile. And a kind of a Mahomes that is not mobile, there's definite deterrence there for laying the number with the Chiefs. But I think you're kind of hot enough in the Chiefs this week as well.
Yeah, so this might sound super square, but
it's hip to be square, man.
I mean,
not when you say it with the German accent.
So before last Sunday, I didn't anticipate to be able to lay 3 points with the greatest quarterback and coaching combination in the National Football League. And now I was able to, just because Mahomes has entered the concussion protocol. I think he's going to play. If Chad Henne plays on Sunday, I will eat it. No problem at all. But I think Patrick Mahomes is going to play. I made this number around -4-ish. I made a decent adjustment for the home field advantage / bye week advantage, because usually when we get the two best teams in the conference, both will have had the bye week in the wildcard round. This year, only the Chiefs have that advantage. They also had the advantage of resting most of their starters in week 17. So there's some clear rest advantage, in my opinion. And since the NFL has installed the wildcard round, the home team in the championship round has been very strong and has been outperforming their market expectation. These teams are 28-12 straight up, winning by close to a touchdown on average at home in the championship round. If they play a team that has not have a bye week, they are 17-7, also close to a touchdown margin. So I am not a trend guy at all, and that's a very small sample size, but I think there's some merit to it, and there are some causal reasons, because we are getting the better team in general, because the better team usually gets the bye week. They have a rest advantage. They have the home field advantage in the playoffs. So I made some adjustments towards the Chiefs. And in the end, it comes down to which offense do I trust more throughout 60 minutes of the game. I like the Bills. I like what they have been doing this year. They have a very high potential for their passing offense, but I think overall, I trust Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid and a solid rushing attack a little bit more than I trust the Bills. In the first matchup, the Bills blitzed Patrick Mahomes one single time on just one single dropback out of 34, I guess. They played basically entirely out of two high looks and invited the Chiefs to run the ball. But the problem is that the Chiefs are a top 5 rushing offense on early downs. So even if you invite them to run the ball, they will be able to run the ball, and it doesn't really hurt their scoring expectation when they are able to run the ball well. And what's also funny, in the first matchup, they had 0.09 EPA per rush, which is extremely good, which would rank first in the league. But they also had 0.5 EPA per passing play. So the strategy of shortening the game and inviting the Chiefs to run is, I think, very sound, because you would always prefer a 5-yard gain on the ground over a 40-yard Patrick Mahomes play down the field. But even if you do that, they will still gash you on the ground. They might still be able to pass the ball very well. And when you are shortening the game, you are always going to have the same amount of drives than your opponents. So even if the total drives in the game get down to, like, let's say 18 instead of 22, you still have to outscore your opponent, and you still have to score more points per drive than your opponent. So in the end, it all comes down to, in my opinion, getting a field goal with Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes at home in the championship round, just because Patrick Mahomes is in the concussion protocol. So if he didn't leave the game against the Browns, we would never see -3. And I'm just taking a shot with the, in my opinion, better team overall.
Drew, hip to be square, best quarterback, best play caller. Is it that simple? Do you think? I'll get your thoughts on the total in a second. But what did you have to? What do you think of what Suma just said there?
Generally, yes. Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the NFL, best player in the NFL. Andy Reid is the best play caller. That's true. I still am struggling to tell you that the space between them and the next best team, which is the Bills, is all that great. It's, the Bills are. I wouldn't look past their ability to score. I wouldn't look past spoiler alert, I'm about to make a case for the under, so I'm trying to be a little careful about what I'm saying here. But the idea that the Chiefs are going to be able to win with margin is something we just haven't seen in a really long time. And it's, you thought it was coming in that Browns game, right? The Chiefs didn't punt in the entire game. In fact, the only time they didn't even have a scoring opportunity was the interception that Chad Henne threw in the end zone. And yeah, that's pretty. That's pretty impressive for an offense. For a team that's in a playoff game against a playoff defense. But I would still have some reservations that the Chiefs are as good as the peak that we've seen from them in the last handful of years. We talked about it last week. They've had attrition on the offensive line. They have had issues with the running game. I don't think that Clyde Edwards-Helaire goes in this one. I think this is the D. Williams show. And while Williams looked frisky last week, he was fighting hard for those yards, and it was impressive. And he added a nice dimension to their game. But what really, and Suma's point about the rushing, the Chiefs being a good rushing team, that's fair also. But I would like to highlight one thing in particular, which is Chiefs EPA per rush is, if you take out Patrick Mahomes scrambles, it's not good. In fact, it's like below league average. And the dimension that he adds to their, to their game, not just throughout the game, scrambling on third down, but specifically when the game is on the line, how often they run the think about the 3rd and 14 play that we saw the Chiefs, get 13.5 yards with Chad Henne scrambling, right? To me, that was classic Andy Reid, end of game. We need a first down. We're going to get it on the, we need a first down. We'd prefer the clock keep running. What we're going to do, we're going to clear out one side of the field. We're going to give running lanes to our quarterback. We're going to act like we're going to try to pass it downfield and get the first down conversion, because everyone knows we can, because Pat Mahomes is that good making 20-yard passes. And then, oh, by the way, he's got an enormous running lane. He can, scamper for 20 yards, and pick up the first down, and we put away the game, right? Like, that's been their MO now, going back to last year's playoff run. In fact, last year's AFC title game, Patrick Mahomes running against the Tennessee Titans was hugely important to get them back in that game. In fact, at the end of the first half, Mahomes, running that touchdown in, that, to me, that flipped the game and sealed it for the Chiefs. They never looked back. And I didn't think Mahomes looked especially lively on the ground against the Browns after that foot injury. I think that particular wrinkle might be enough of an edge here to get involved in either the Bills or the under or both. And I think the EPA per play that we saw on the ground by the Chiefs in the first matchup, which was invited, the Bills absolutely said, okay, run on us, do not pass. We'll do our best to limit the bleeding, on the ground, and we'll try to go score for score. Well, they couldn't do it. That type of game state, again, seems reasonable, except I question whether the Chiefs are going to have that high an efficiency on the ground in the, given that Mahomes' foot is injured, and given that, they're down to D. Williams as their best running option. So there are enough questions here about the Chiefs offense and how good exactly they're going to look And I thought, and I don't love the Bills defense. I've made a lot of bets against, them being able to stop teams over the course of this season because they just haven't been especially anywhere close to the level we saw them play last year. But, against Travis Kelce, do they have a matchup? They can play pretty well against the tight end. We saw them take away Mark Andrews last week. They for sure that was expected to be some place that the Ravens could exploit them, and they couldn't do it. Do they have a guy that can match up with Tyreek Hill and Trey White? Absolutely. So is Sammy Watkins not going to be on the field? Offensive line, still some question marks there for the Chiefs. And I get all of Suma's points. They've had extra rest. They are at home. They should be, lifted up by the home crowd, and they are the better team. They should be favored, but at the end of the day, I still question whether this Chiefs team rolls out of bed and scores 30 in their current form.
Yeah, and even if they do, 30-20 kind of win gets us up with both bets. There's we wanted to jump back in. Just one thing on that, just before you come back into it, you're referring to the Chiefs run again. I was watching that first half of the Ravens Bills, and I honestly thought that the Bills may never ever run the ball ever again. Like Singletary was in the backfield so many times. You're like, he's just there as a blocker. They're never throwing the ball, and I just wonder if they need to change tack. If we know they're a one-dimensional offense, but they do it really, really, really well. But how long can you stay one-dimensional for so long? At this stage of the season, you have to be able to run the ball and grind and move the chains. Suma, jump back in, buddy.
Just 2 points. Even when I filter out all scrambles from Patrick Mahomes, I still have them as the 4th best rushing offense on early downs, on first and second down. So I couldn't believe it myself, to be honest, but I have them ranked 4th in success rate and EPA per rush on early downs without Patrick Mahomes scrambles.
That's a sample size problem because it's a tiny, tiny number of plays. How often are they running? How often are they running on early downs?
274 times.
Okay.
And for example, the Packers are 304. So but to your point, of course, when they run the ball, they are by far not as efficient as they would be throwing the ball, for sure. But I think that last week they had so many various looks in their run game, and they can disguise so much stuff. And when you give the Chiefs the opportunity to run the ball against light boxes, they won't collect 10 yards every time. But I think it's enough so that they don't destroy their opportunities to pass the ball on second and third down. And if they run the ball on first down for 5 yards, the whole playbook is open for the Chiefs. So that's something that, in the end, I just think that the Bills defense, whatever they want to do, they have to somehow create turnovers, in my opinion. Somehow force punts, somehow get some jobs done on third down. But just by inviting the Chiefs to run the ball, I don't really think that you can entirely shut them down by this.
All right. I think we're going to take the Chiefs -3, and we're going to take the under 53.5 and split the difference. And look, if one of those are our best bets later on, we will talk about that then. Okay, let's move on. Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the Green Bay Packers. Look, both of these games are good. I just have a feeling that this one is going to be really good. Just have this feeling. The Bucs, and this is an interesting price here because look, they're 2.61 on the money line, whereas Buffalo are about 2.3. But I think a lot of people can make the case that of both dogs this week, Tampa could be more live. 2.61, you can back the Bucs. Just under 1.59 for the Packers. The Bucs getting a 3.5 point start at just under 1.91 -110, and the total is 51. Suma, take it away. I think your angle here is a total.
Yeah, I think not only mine, but we will get to that. So I simply don't think that the number should be 51. I think it should be higher, and there are a couple of reasons for it. First of all, just to give some granular analysis, last week, Packers and Bucs played 50-point games against much worse offenses. Against Drew Brees, who couldn't throw the ball downfield, and against Jared Goff, who was playing with basically 9 fingers. And this time we are getting 2 top 6 offenses getting at each other. And with worse defenses than like the Rams and the Saints. So just because of that, I was wondering why we were getting 51 and then 50 and a half at some point. Both offenses are the number 1 and number 2 scoring offenses in the league. They are number 1 and number 2 in scoring points per game, and they are number 1 and number 5 at scoring points per drive. So let's say that both teams are getting just 9 drives in this game, and they score up to their average scoring margin. They stick to their average scoring points per drive, and they are getting only 9 drives each, which would be a below average amount of drives. In that case, the total should be 54. So just to give some perspective about that total number, just when we are looking at raw averages, I think that the number should be a little bit higher. But now we dive into the matchup, and we are really getting the best offense in the league, in the Packers, playing against an average at best passing defense in the Bucs. And last week, the Packers crushed the number 1 defense in the league. And there wasn't really anything the Rams could do against the Packers on defense. So I'm thinking, what could the Bucs potentially do to slow down the Packers offense? And aside of stopping the run with Vita Vea back in the lineup, I can't find a lot of reasons for it. And the week 6 matchup, where the Packers only scored 10 points, that doesn't really matter to me at all, because that wasn't week 6. Aaron Rodgers had his worst game of the season. The Bucs knew what was coming on some plays. They were sitting on some routes. They got a tipped interception where Jason Pierre-Paul was offside. So it was just a game for the Packers to forget. They couldn't do anything in that game, and I'm expecting a completely different Packers offense this week. And Aaron Rodgers also mentioned after that game in week 6 that the Bucs knew what was coming, and that's something they have to work on. I fully expect the Packers to come out with a proper game plan to attack that Bucs defense. I think Todd Bowles had a masterpiece last week against the Saints, but he was playing against a quarterback who couldn't get anything going deep.
Could not throw the ball, no.
And who couldn't place the ball accurately on intermediate routes against man coverage. So as soon as the Saints went to 5 wide, Todd Bowles called a cover 1 blitz with aggressive man coverage. And if you do that against Aaron Rodgers, it's over. So I think that the Packers will come out with a game plan where they throw the ball a little bit more, because the Bucs are getting Vita Vea back. They are pretty solid against the run. And I think if you want to beat the Bucs, you have to throw the ball on them. So I think that the Packers will come out with a game plan where they use lots of quick passes, take what the Bucs give them, counter those blitzes from Todd Bowles, and then put in an occasional deep shot, because those Bucs receivers love to sit on routes underneath. And I would not be surprised if we see guys like Marcus Valdes-Scantling and Devontae Adams faking some out routes or some slants, and then suddenly crush up the field on go routes, and they are wide open for walking touchdowns. So that would be something that would not surprise me. So I don't really see how the Packers necessarily stay below 27 or 30 points in this one. And then with the total being 51, you need the Bucs to score 21 or 24, which is completely realistic in my opinion.
Yep.
The Packers, their defensive numbers are pretty solid over the course of the season, but they benefited from an easy schedule. I think that the Packers pass rush will get neutralized by the Bucs offensive line, like they did in the first matchup. The Packers love to play lots out of nickel and dime, and Jair Alexander might take away one receiver, but then we get Chris Godwin and Antonio Brown playing against Kevin King and Shannon Sullivan. And that's, in my opinion, is the key matchup for the Bucs to score some points here, because they can't just run the ball and try to get anything going against Jair Alexander. They have to attack those second, third, and fourth cornerbacks of the Packers, and that would be, in my opinion, the proper way to move the ball. And no matter how I look at this game, the weather should not play a big role. We have some snow in the morning. should not be any issue during the game. Wind forecast is around 4 to 5 miles per hour, so not really any major impact there. And we are just getting two very good offenses against so-so defenses. And I just think that the total should be in the 43 to 44, 53 to 54 range. And I happily took the 50.5 earlier this week, and I would still easily play it at 51.
We played this total back in week 6 as well. Anyone remember what number we locked in? What was the number?
54.
Good man, 54. 38 points at halftime, 10 points in the third quarter, nothing thereafter. That was a tough beat. I just good memories. But you did actually, I think you guys were very hot on the Bucs money line there as well. That was 2.2 in week 6. And Drew, even from terms that, like, it's very hard to make an argument back in the under here. I get it with the Chiefs game, but I don't want to have any part of an under here in this one. But even in terms of the side, when you look at the Bucs last week in New Orleans, they don't get those turnovers. I don't know if they're winning that game. And I'll be honest, they were never really threatened. You knew the only time they got stretched was when Jameis came in at wide receiver, which the whole world knew. Oh, he's not going to go in. He's not coming in here to block, guys. He's the only guy on the the quarterback roster that has an arm to stretch the field. That was the only time they were stretched. And hey, presto, they gave up a touchdown. Rodgers can stretch this Bucs offense. This Bucs defense, and that's where they're probably going to be up against it, in my view. Anyway, what are you thinking on this one?
100% agree. In that first quarter in week 6, Aaron Rodgers' EPA per dropback was 0.77. That is an astronomically high number. In general, the matchup of passing game for Green Bay is a solid matchup against the passing defense for the Bucs by my numbers. The Buccaneers last week in the passing game looked great because they were able to cheat. They are an aggressive unit. They knew that nothing was really going over their head when Drew Brees was taking the snaps, and so they were able to play up, play tight. Not let guys like Michael Thomas get separation inside of 10 yards, and that was a great way to really tamp down anything that New Orleans wanted to do offensively. It's not a great matchup against the Packers at all. I thought Matt LaFleur, we have consistently seen throughout his tenure as the Green Bay head coach, he scripts first 15 plays exceptionally well. Probably the best in the league. And I don't actually think it's particularly close in terms of first 15 script. Now, and again, as mentioned, his first 15 script against the Bucs the first time they played was freaking awesome. Like they were up 10-0. It could have been 14-0 if they have a little cleaner, trip into the red zone in their first possession. And, that's been how the Packers have won games this whole year. They go out and they play efficient early, they get an early lead, and then they hold on for dear life because their defense gives up garbage time points like it's their job. Now, the most likely outcome we see here is Green Bay comes in with the sharp game plan and they put points on the board early. Tampa Bay comes in with the game plan that Bruce Arians and Byron Leftwich have been cooking, which is lots of early down running to playoff Lenny, not really giving Brady the opportunity to, move the ball effectively, and they dig themselves a hole. They could have dug themselves a much bigger hole against the Saints last week, which would have been fun to see how they climbed out of, but it was 6-0 instead of 14-0 after Saints' first 2 offensive possessions. But regardless, it takes the Bucs being in a deficit for them to really snap out of it and stop shooting themselves in the foot with some of their sequencing. And I think I think there's a very likely game script here where Packers score early, put the Bucs in a hole, and force the Bucs to be more aggressive to stop, running minus EV plays. And at that point, all bets are off. Live total should probably be 60. The Bucs are a team that are absolutely a team that are capable of a comeback because they have the best offensive weapons in the game, from player 1 to player 7. All of those guys are good in the passing game. Gronkowski, Brait, Tyler Johnson and Scotty Miller. Like, these guys are meaningful contributors on top of the three of the best wide receivers in all of the game in Evans, Godwin, and Brown. So it is an embarrassment of riches in the passing game for these guys, which means at a deficit, they can come back. Their offensive line pass blocks exceptionally well. They're going to give Brady time. And their rush defense is good enough that the Packers are not going to be able to play keep away by going on 8-minute drives, scoring. We're not going to see second half 8 minutes off the clock. Packers score a field goal and go up by 13, and then the game ends 23-10, right? Like that's not an outcome that I think is really realistic in this game, because the Bucs run defense is good enough to get them the ball back if it's in the second half and the Packers have a lead. So there are a lot of game states here that lead to a shootout. And I think realistically, the team with the ball last probably wins. I think if you're looking for an angle on the side, my guess is that this continues to move down to a flat 3. I don't think my numbers don't put a ton of separation between these two teams at all. If this was a totally neutral game state, I'm at like pick 'em. Okay. But this is the Bucs' third game in a row on the road. We've seen that matter. This is the Bucs going from Florida to a cold Green Bay. We've seen that matter. And we've seen, fans in the stands have an impact. So if you want to sell me that you're going to give the Packers 3 points of home field here because of all of those factors, I'm not going to really, going to jump at and take those points because, okay, that's fair. But, realistically, team with the ball last, having, Bucs with the chance to come back and tie or win late in this game seems entirely likely. You have two very experienced quarterbacks who aren't going to be out there with nerves and, sailing balls. Like these guys are cool as it can be late in game states when asked to come back. We've seen Aaron Rodgers throw incredible passes under extreme duress in games against the likes of the Cardinals in the playoffs and other obvious examples throughout his tenure. First ever NFC title game they get to host, by the way, in Green Bay for Aaron Rodgers. He's been in 4 previous NFC title games before, all on the road. So first ever Lambeau AFC for Aaron Rodgers. Either way. Both of these quarterbacks, I think, are going to show us something pretty excellent on Sunday. And I think realistically, I'm looking at like 31-28, 34-31. I mean, I think realistically, this should be, the total should be in the 55 ballpark here. And I think it could even go over that. So if you're going to give me over 51, I'll take that any day.
Just in terms of the side, Joe, just kind of trying to disseminate what you're saying there. Even the Packers -1.5 in the first half, is that kind of maybe a good look there? There you go. I sold you on it. Hey,
absolutely.
I want to just talk. Yeah, sorry, Matt. Go.
Give me first quarter and first half for the Packers. Honestly, their ability to get out to early leads is just, it's uncanny. And you can. It's tough for me to see a game state here where the Bucs go and are efficient early, given the way that they are coming into games play calling, right? I mean, I don't see Leonard Fournette, breaking an 80-yard run in the first quarter in this one, on first and 10 or second and 10. It'll be good for the scoring, but I just don't see it happening. For whatever reason, like, I don't know if this is a trend or if it's noise, but Brady, we've seen a lot of Tom Brady playoff games. And you know what we haven't seen in a lot of those Tom Brady playoff games? First quarter scoring. It takes him a little while to kind of get a feel for what the defense is going to give him before he decides, okay, well, I'm going to make these adjustments at the line of scrimmage. They're getting pressure over here. We're going to move some of the protection to stop that. This guy is consistently getting open. I'm going to start to look for him. It takes Brady, about a quarter to really figure out a decent defense, and the Packers are a decent defense. So I'm for sure interested in a Green Bay first quarter, Green Bay first half, and the full game. And honestly, at that point, if we're right, the best angle of all is Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay at like plus what, 7.5? Some big fat spread after
even on the money line.
3.
You said, they are built to play catch up with those wide receiver weapons. There's no two ways about it. And once they can kind of say the left, which look, just get rid of playoff Lenny. He's done. Line Brady up in the shotgun, and away you go. And you know what? I know this is going to be talked about this week. Regards a Florida team having to go to Wisconsin in whatever frigid temperatures there are. But I'm old enough to remember when the Bucs played in the same, division as the Packers, the NFC Central. They could not win a game against Brett Favre up there for years. No, albeit they had a very good defense. They're probably playing with Sean King, a quarterback, or whoever the fuck was there. Mike Goldstad had some great games up there. God, I'm showing my age here again, Drew. But like, it's going to be talked about a lot this week. Look, Brady's obviously got plenty of playoff experience playing in the cold. He's in the AFC. I mean, like outside of playing the odd game in Indianapolis, every one of those games has been outdoors. But I don't know, Drew, are we reading that much into it? It's going to get very narrative-y this week again.
Yeah, I mean, I'll take you back in time, not the Sean King Buccaneers, but the Brad Johnson Buccaneers.
Oh yes, yeah.
And we'll go back in time to yeah, we'll go back in time to January 19th, 2003. They go to Philadelphia. It is 26 degrees with 16-mile-an-hour winds, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were 4-point dogs in that game, and they won 27-10.
Yeah.
So
that was like
there are examples. You can always find examples that counter that to a degree, and but just overall, if you're going to give me 16 games in a weekend, and you're going to tell me you have 16 Florida teams traveling to 16 Wisconsin teams, and do you think that there's a likelihood that overall there's a little bit of a bias in favor of the Wisconsin teams? Yeah, of course. I mean, it's not easy this time of year, but I think that's built into the number and then some.
Yep, agree with that. We went down memory lane there, Brad. I will say that was Gruden. That was Gruden's first year in charge. He obviously went to the Super Bowl and won, but they had lost a lot of games in Philly. They lost a lot of games up there where they just could not get any offense going. But anyway, we'll come off that. Right, before we get to, I'm going to lock in, gentlemen, for that one. So just bring it up on screen again. We're going to take Packers over 51.0. Suma has already put this up on insights.matchbook.com. So if you want a more detailed breakdown of that total, head for that. And let's take Packers first half -1.5 at 1.9. And, just very quickly, Drew, before you come off that, I'm always just cagey enough about those first quarter ones, just in case Green Bay win the toss and elect to defer and Tampa Bay get the ball. But you can look, you can look at the stuff in running, in play. If you have a good feed and you're watching the coin toss, maybe if you just get a bit of information, you can hit on that number before some of the books actually see it as well.
The other thing I would probably recommend, you can shop around and don't lay -110 on Packers first quarter. Find an alternate way to attack that line. You can get Packers -2.5. Because the Packers either. They're not going to win by the first quarter by 1. I mean, maybe it's going to be 14-13. Maybe it'll be 7-6. But that's I would guess that if the Packers win the first quarter, it's more like 14-3, 10-0, something like that.
There could literally be 3 possessions in that first quarter. They might get the ball twice. Bucs might get it once.
But we talked about it last week. Like they're going to come out and they're going to run on the Rams. Everybody knew that that the pass was going to be well defended by the Rams. And what do? They come out and they just ran it down their damn throats. I do not expect at all someone as smart as Matt LaFleur comes into this game and says, we're going to get it done with Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams right into the teeth and the strength of this Bucs defense. No freaking way.
Yeah. Remember at the start of the season when we were a small bit down on the Packers? We didn't say that they'd win 13 games, but they've been so impressive. But he's a terrific head coach. And you kind of saw last year when he did come on board that Rodgers wasn't really feeling it, but you can see it this year that these guys and Nathaniel Hackett as well as offensive coordinator, they are absolutely clicking. And they scored 32 points against the Rams. And I'll be honest, guys, I think they still they weren't in fifth gear. I didn't think they were.
Yeah. I'm going to check the scoreboard, but I remember there were 2 guys who had best bets week 1 on Green Bay Packers against the Vikings, I thought. And then I'm pretty sure someone went right back to the well with the Green Bay Packers as 5-point favorites at home against the Lions week 2. Oh man, can you imagine now laying 5 points with the Packers against the Lions? Unbelievable. Yeah. So we weren't that low on the Packers the game. We were high on them relative to the market.
That is fair enough. I suppose I was probably thinking back to last year where we knew when they were going to San Francisco that they weren't all that we thought they were.
Again, just that was just a nightmare matchup for them. And honestly, I'm curious what Suma's thoughts are. I know Suma, when we did the deep dive, you thought Bucs Chiefs was going to be your Super Bowl. Have you come off of that? You think we're going to see Packers Chiefs? And if that's the case, do you think they match up well at all against the Chiefs?
So I think Packers Chiefs would be an epic Super Bowl. And I wonder where the total would open at. But I can come back to the side in the Packers Bucs game. I'm exactly like you there. I make it around Packers -3, maybe between -3, -3.5. I also have the Packers only a tiny bit ahead on a neutral field, but I just adjusted for a home field rest, Bucs third straight road game, and temperature, etc., etc. But I would not be surprised if the Bucs pull the upset in the end. So if you told me that the team with the ball in its hands at the end of the game wins, and it would be the Bucs, I would not be stunned at all. So
yeah,
but Packers Chiefs would be a great Super Bowl.
I'm with you there. I think if there's a shock this weekend, I think the Bucs at 2.61 currently a Matchbook. I think that's a very generous price. Before we get to best bets, guys, just want to do a quick recap of the bets we do have. So we're taking the Chiefs -3 at 1.99, under 53.5 in the same game at 1.95. Bucs Packers, we're going over in that one, 51 at 1.92. And the Packers first half -1.5 at 1.9. The great scripting LaFleur. Hopefully he'll get that one up. And you're looking at those prices and you're thinking, man, I can't get those prices anywhere. That's because you're not at Matchbook. Sign up today. If you haven't got an account, matchbook.com. For your first bet, a 10 quid bet, it's got to be at odds of even money, which is 2.0 or more. Your next bet is 10 quid thereafter. 18 plus only. Please do gamble responsibly at all times. Right, lads, that's me. Brings us in. Conference finals, best bets. Presume we've talked about them already, but Suma, what's your best bet of the weekend, man?
Drew, do you want to take the over?
I'm fine. I think the totals are a better way to attack this card, personally.
Okay, so Drew probably takes the over in the Packers Bucs game, and I will take the Chiefs -3 in that case.
Has he answered the question for you, Drew? Is he?
Let's do it. Yeah.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
Just on that one, I'm actually going to go a small bit off piece. I've already played this one early in the week. I'm taking the Packers team total 27.5 because I can see that number coming up, and I hate betting one at 28.5 when I know if it just lands on 28, I'm going to be absolutely sick if I didn't take that number. Look, there could be weather come, guys, but I'll be honest, I think it's 51, 52, it gets to there. I don't see it come back to 50.5, 49, unless there's some sort of snowstorm hits Wisconsin, but over 27.5 Packers team total for me. I reckon they go up and down the field on that Bucs defense, and look, it's going to be a shootout, hopefully.
You could see a final. It's not crazy. We could see a final score that's Packers Titans 40-14 sort of thing. I mean, it's entirely possible that the Packers is one-way traffic here, but I think it's going to be a game. I'm going to bet some Bucs live at whatever the best number I can get, maybe at the end of the first quarter or so. Because Tom Brady's he's an answer. He's an answering quarterback, right? You score a touchdown against him. He goes down 2 scores. He's the kind of guy that fights back and scores an answer. So I do think it should be a competitive game. And, I think I didn't really make an especially strong case for the Chiefs under, but that's basically, the market I think is missing to a degree how important Mahomes scrambling is. And I think that he's going to be a little bit limited on the ground, his ability to get the key first downs. And, we've seen some pretty hard regression here from the Bills offense as they've played some of these tougher defenses in the playoffs. And, the Chiefs defense doesn't get a ton of shine. They don't get a ton of credit, but they obviously play up in these big games. And they played well last week. Holden, they did really quite well against a very strong offense that was the Cleveland Browns. So I think that you see a pretty similar scoreline for Chiefs Bills as what we saw for Chiefs Browns.
Yep, agree with that. Okay, guys, we're out of time. We're off next week because there's just no football next week. The week after that, of course, we will have a Super Bowl special with I suppose we probably have to play 1 or 2 prop bets that week, Drew. Maybe it's up in the air a bit. There's only going to be about 6,000 this year of them. So,
it's going to be a really fun. If it's Packers Chiefs, it's going to be a really fun, tricky handicap because, as Suma mentioned, the total is going to be like 59. and all of the value from a numbers is going to be taking prop unders, but
hold your nose.
Hold your nose. It's going to be tough.
Taking unders, yeah, but that's obviously one way traffic in that market. Can't wait to see what the number would be on that. Will we get a 60-point total in the Super Bowl? Could happen.
What was Rams Patriots total? Was that close to 60? That was close.
Yeah, it kept on dropping all week, though, didn't it?
Oh, it did. Yeah,
it did come down a fair bit. Yeah, I think the opener was quite big. All right, guys, thanks as ever. We'll be back in 2 weeks' time. Rob hopefully should be back for a Super Bowl special. But until then, enjoy what are potentially 2 cracking games this weekend. Best of luck with your bets, and we'll talk to you in 2 weeks' time.